You have to pray 5 times a day. That's all we hear about online, but that's not the reality. But we don't talk about that. We talk about forcing somebody, pray 5 times a day. They're going to be sneaking out. People will do whatever they need in order to serve. Hanafis, Malikis, Hanbalis, as well as the Shafis, okay? These are the 4 madhabs. And a lot of fiqh rulings are coming and being discussed and distilled through. Good morning. So I started this series on TikTok and it's called Post-Salah Talks. So this got me from 0 to 13,000 followers within 1 week, and now we're still climbing. We don't even know if TikTok is going to be around anymore. But I wanted to talk about things that I think about that are consuming my mind, but also trying to make it a little bit easier because I focus on habit formation. So what I do is research. So I do top, bottom, bottom up. What that means is I cross-reference like the Quran and Sunnah with day-to-day life. So it's very application-based because truth is truth no matter how you flip it. It's going to be the reality of what that is, okay? So what I wanted to talk about today is the fiqh of praying 5 times a day. I know everybody talks about this, and I'm not going to be talking like the basic people be talking. I'm going to be analyzing both sides and how there are pitfalls, which are completely mindset and social conditioning. Because a lot of people really do not realize that every single person has a way of manipulating any situation in order to get the outcome that they desire, okay? That's what you're going to realize by the end of this video. So within the Sunni school of thought, you have 4 schools. You have the Hanafis, Malikis, Hanbalis, as well as the Shafis, okay? These are the 4 madhabs. And a lot of fiqh rulings are coming and being discussed and distilled through these 4 schools. Now we have something very interesting, which is the Salafi movement, which is kind of like an offshoot of the Hanbalis. So they're, da'if, they love saying that. What's your dalil? And that's the same process that the Hanbalis use. So that's kind of like mentally, when it comes to rulings, that's how I consider them together. Now, what's interesting about these 2 differences is the fact that one believes that if you miss your prayer, that you don't have to make it up. So this concept is called qada, which means that you make up the missed prayer. While the other one says, no, you don't really have to do that. Just pray your nawafils because prayer is only for a set amount of time. So this is where diversity of opinion comes in, because there are certain things within the Quran that are ambiguous, and we're still trying to fill it in using the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's why you have ikhtilaf, which is the diversity of opinion. So now let's talk about the Salafi approach. What is the beauty of it and what are the pitfalls? And then the madhabi approach of what the pitfalls are, as well as how that works, and then understanding what the psychology is behind forming a habit, because praying 5 times a day is a daily habit. So let's talk about the Salafi approach. You find majority of these to be within Saudi Arabia or anybody who has been educated there. It doesn't matter where, because of globalization, we all believe kind of like everything is interrelated. So it could be an African, it could be an Asian, it could be an American. They all believe this. So how Sharia works is that it comes from the Quran. So they are taking a specific verse within the Quran, which says that all prayers are for a prescribed time. So in this case, what that would mean is the Quran is king in the sense of hierarchy. So that's what would be taken. While the madhabi approach is that there are 2 sahih hadiths which say that you should be making them up, right? But according to the Salafis, the Quran is king over the Sunnah. Okay, so that's kind of where the differences of opinion come in, and both of them have accuracy, right? We are allowed to have diversity in opinion, but the problem is the pitfalls. I'm more concerned about the pitfalls of what happens in which people use these rulings as fiqh, which is a human opinion, in order to negate the Sharia, which is to pray 5 times a day. If both of these paths or understandings or fiqh rulings allow you to pray 5 times a day, we wouldn't be talking about this. But there is psychological tricks and loopholes that we use in order to not follow the Sharia. So that's why I'm talking about this. So the pitfall of somebody who is Salafi or follows this opinion of the Quran is king, and that it should be during a prescribed time, is that they constantly decide to forget, conveniently forget, because life happens, right? So this is not an excuse, but it can become an excuse over a long term. So scientists have done this research. I was reading a willpower book and I learned this from it. It's called the what the hell effect. So basically when people are doing diets, if they take a morsel of food, then they tell themselves it's not worth it and they quit on their diet. This is waswasa, if you really think about it, where you use your thought loops and your logic in order to manipulate the situation, okay? We all do this to a certain extent. I'm not blaming anybody, but I want us to realize, the biggest trick the devil ever pulled, and this is a Christian saying, is the fact that he doesn't exist. We don't talk about waswasa. We don't talk about how thoughts can can negatively impact your action. That's what I discovered within my methodology. When it comes to mindset, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and emissions are what are actually the building blocks of why you get into a habit or not. You have to pray 5 times a day. That's all we hear about online, but that's not the reality. But we don't talk about that. We talk about forcing somebody, pray 5 times a day. They're going to be sneaking out. People will do whatever they need in order to serve them, okay? So people are told not to smoke cigarettes because it will decrease their lifespan. They're still doing it. People only think in terms of what serves them. It's not about you, it's about what's about me. And that's why it's so important that we learn the reasons behind them so that we can actually apply them. If we are expecting people to follow the rules and not understand, we're gonna have problems. Oh, we already have problems. Literally, I went to an Islamic event and there were a bunch of guys sitting there. The adhan was called and they had nothing on their eyes, like no guilt, no, I need to leave this room. They were just sitting there. That is a state of being that we have. I wish we did data to find out how many people actually pray 5 times a day, but we can't because that's something that's private, right? But we know, we have a sense that this is not actually the norm. Anyways, going back to the Salafi opinion, a lot of people will use this ruling of prayer is supposed to be only during a prescribed time. Now that they lose it or they don't pray that one, they're going to go to the next one and the next one. And then by the end of the day, they've missed all 5 prayers. More importantly, with this ruling, another pitfall is the fact that they have absolutely no practice. It is a muscle. So if you don't do it at all, then guess what? You're not going to be good at it. Like, that's just learning. That's a learning curve. You have to do something over and over again in order to get good at it. But the beauty of this path or this understanding or this fiqh, for me personally, when I study like habits and how they are formed, is the fact that there is no paralysis. So you're able to live in the current moment and not be wondering or worrying about your past. And I think this is a powerful thing because a lot of us, especially if you look into the madhhab, and we're going to look into that next, you're going to get into paralysis to the point that you want to leave it off. So with that, let's transition over to the madhabis. What they believe is that if you miss your prayer, you have to make it up. Now, if you believe in that also, it'll be at the end of the day and you have 5 to make up. You miss the next day, you have 5 to make up. That's 10. It keeps on adding over and over again. Now you are psychologically living in the past consistently. So now you get into paralysis. Now the opinion of scholars is the fact that you shouldn't be missing 1 or 2 back to back, right? So that you don't get into that state. But there was this one website and it made my head hurt so bad, in which there was a qada list in which you can make up 3, 4, 5 years of your life if you are going through this. I was like, who has time for that? So that's the thing, right? This is about humanity. At the end of the day, it's a personal opinion, but the Sharia is king. And that's, I think, what my problem is. When it comes to the hierarchy, you have fiqh down here and you have Sharia up here. So if you are following the fiqh, or you think you're following it, you're most likely not following it the correct way, because we don't have a full understanding of each school of thought, because we live in a secular world, and also we are also intermixed because of globalization. But if you had full understanding, you wouldn't have this problem. So for somebody who's conservative and understands it fully and just sticks within their madhhab, then they are okay. But for all of the rest of us, we're just, trying to live life, okay? We're just trying to live life. You have to change your mindset from fiqh mindset to Sharia mindset. The Sharia says pray 5 times a day. That's a requirement. Now, there's a differences of opinion on this as well, right? Is it leaving off the 5 prayers or not leaving them off? I like the opinion of leaving them off because you might miss them. Everybody misses them from time to time. So praying 5 times a day always wins. So if you are within the Salafi camp and you believe that all prayers are supposed to be at a prescribed time, and you use that fiqh to negate the Sharia of praying 5 times a day, and it has been days, weeks, months, and you haven't prayed, then you realize that you're being played by waswasa, okay? So it requires personal self-assessment, and we use our nafs and our logic and emotions in order to manipulate situations. If you're also within the madhhabi and you keep on missing it over and over again, and now you have a lot of anxiety, then you're being played by waswasa again. But what I personally like to do is that I pick the Sharia over everything. I don't care about which fiqh it is. Like some days the Salafi fiqh makes a lot of sense to me, right? make tawbah and move on. There's certain circumstances in life in which that is a requirement. But there's other times, for instance, for me, I'm a mother of 2 toddlers. I've birthed children, okay? When it comes to praying or keeping them safe, also being married, there's certain rituals that needs to be done when you're married when it comes to praying 5 times a day, as well as owning a house, how much cleaning I have to do, as well as, gaining knowledge. This is like my life. I do this all the time. I read a lot. I have a lot of burdens on me. So what that means is technically my time, my energy, and my attention is very limited. So I plan my day and my time based off of, what I need to do. So what this means is I wake up between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. every single day. What that means is my Isha is, okay, especially during the summer months, it's a little bit tight. And this is all systematic. I need you to realize this. I didn't mention this earlier. The reason we're having such a hard time with praying 5 times a day is because of the system that we live in. Daylight saving is a Western concept, which means we're using daylight savings to make our prayers a lot closer to each other during winter versus during summer. This is not a concept that existed before. It didn't exist at all. It's now, what is it, 1970s? I'm going to correct myself with this screenshot. So just because we live in the West for a better life, because there was intervention within our countries, our nations, because of oppression and lack of opportunity for growth, is why we're here. Do you understand? That's why this is our land now. So these are systematic problems. So at that point, always go back to the Sharia, and that's what I like to do. So in this case, when I'm talking about, Isha for me is a hard one. It's not even like, I'm doing anything. I'm asleep. I wake up at 4 a.m. before Fajr comes in. Thankfully, to the Shafi madhhab, Isha does not end until after Fajr. So what that means is I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and pray Isha. Some days I'm really that tired. So I'm using a Shafi fiqh that, Hanafis don't have. I think they say when it is at midnight, then it ends. So at this point, my lifestyle, the question that I have to ask myself is, do I follow the fiqh or do I follow the Sharia? I follow the Sharia, which is that it's a requirement upon me to pray 5 times a day. But if you're stuck on the fiqh level, then your life circumstances, as they change, you can't really work with them. Of course, you have to be very cautious of fiqh shopping, but typically when it comes to this, what they are talking about is the fiqh of wudu and the fiqh of praying, those are related. But if it is different categories, it's okay to do them because you're not missing the point. Again, this is a big problem systematically because we're not educated in these madhabs. We don't even know what they are, okay? For instance, in the West, the biggest thing that we have is Hanafi. I went to Ethiopia, I had no idea of what they were doing with Islam. So in the US, wearing pants is not a problem. You see Pakistani people, okay? Because Southeast Asia or Asia is where pants were created. So wearing pants during praying, again, a systematic human challenge. We're having debates about that. People in the Middle East won't understand. They won't understand that because they're Arab, while the Asians understand it because they're Asian. So anyways, growing up in the United States, I really did not realize that the Hanafi madhhab was king here. I had no idea. So wearing pants in the US is not really a problem. I didn't realize this was a problem until I went to Ethiopia, which is majority Shafi madhhab. They just could not understand how this was Islam. For a woman to be wearing pants, no matter the fact it was extra long, they didn't understand it. So I came back and I was studying Islamic thought at this point, and I was just like whining about it. What is going on? Like, what's wrong with people? The teacher at that time turned to me, he said, look, I went to Indonesia and I was wearing a straw hat, like a tourist hat. And then I went in and they were like, you can't come into the masjid with a straw hat. And he said, what's the difference between a straw hat and a kufi? It's a hat. And he said, look, you just gotta deal with the punches, okay? Don't worry about it. Don't worry too much about it. That's kind of what we're having. By definition, is human opinion. Humans' opinions, fatwas, are even lower, okay? Is human opinion. Human opinion is influenced by our experiences, our past history, and the environment that we live in. So for instance, when you're sitting down, and this is, what they teach when it comes to, even the Prophet ﷺ, when they teach when it comes to meditation and how that works, but also how you take control of your emotions. Even the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say when you get angry? Don't get angry. Why? This is brilliant. This is brilliant. At first I was used to be like, why? That makes no sense. Now I get it. Because anger arises by using your 5 senses. So you see something and then you put an interpretation of whether it's good or bad, whether it's harmful to you, whether it makes sense or not, and then the emotion sets in. So it's usually the 5 senses and your experiences that create a thought process that creates the emotion. So if you're able to catch it before it happens, then you have mastery. And this is what he had, and this is what we need to have. So I use that trick. For instance, for me, I'm a wife and a mother. Okay, that should say everything. So I have to really work on my emotional management, and this is the concept that I use. Emotions dictate our life. So these are your thoughts, which are influenced by waswasa, by the way, by shaitan. Okay, this is reality. Every single thing that we do, we have kind of a tint. So you have to be really objective, and that's why sticking to the Sunnah and the Quran is the priority. There's certain things that feel off, but the Sunnah is king. Of course, there are misinterpretations that can happen. Don't get me wrong. There are misinterpretations, but again, interpretation of the human mind. So that's, when you see conservatives who are like, don't use your mind. One of my teachers, a girl came, she was from Saudi, and a girl came and she said, we're not supposed to use our mind. And the teacher was like, then why did he put a brain in your in your body then? Like, what's the point of having a brain? So this is where we get very debatey. But now looking back, I can understand why that opinion exists, because if you're using your thinking mind, that means that waswasa lives in the mind, okay? In the sense that he only gives you thoughts. So thoughts are a mental process, so that I understand that. And another huge problem that we have, because we're extremely intellectual, is the fact that we love to think. Thinking 99% of your day is weird. Nobody has taught us this, but it's a belief system that we have acquired from our environment. You're not supposed to be thinking. You're supposed to be in being, living from your heart, experiencing what Allah allows you to experience on a day-to-day basis. Like that's what it's supposed to be. There's a whole, inner sciences thing, but that's the purpose of life. So at the end of the day, why I'm telling you this and why I think it's extremely important is for you to realize Sharia is king, and then it's fiqh, and then it's fatwa. Okay, so when it comes to your life, the problems that we have with our habits, or why praying 5 times a day seems like an impossibility, is because of the system that we live in. All habits are influenced by systems. So daylight saving is a societal issue that has been created, okay, for saving energy or something. I'm not even sure. Like, it doesn't even make technical sense. But they did that, and they weren't thinking about us. They weren't thinking about Muslims praying 5 times a day. Okay, so that's why it's a lot harder during winter to keep up with it. So you have to create your own personal habit systems, which requires you to work on your mindset as well as your actions, so that you can make it a lot easier, like 10 times easier. So these are the systems that I use and have designed in order to make it easier for me to pray 5 times a day. It's so easy now, yeah? And it's even more like, it's sweet, you know what I'm saying? But you have to have knowledge. Mindset is going to be the number one thing. What are you thinking? What are the holes within your knowledge? And how do you gain clarity? And you don't get trapped by mental and emotional and thoughts and all of these things that are created and manufactured by something that is external of you. So you have to be able to distinguish between what is the Sunnah and what is Allah's rulings, and then what the system has caused in order for it to be a lot harder, and then your own personal habits. Everything is interrelated. If you want to know more about this, of course, you can go over to my website. I don't usually dress like this, so don't get a little bit, okay? This is Post-Fajr Talks. So until next time, inshallah, make sure to check them out. Do the free version, also the paid version if you want more support. Me holding your hand, and now my son has woken up and has seen all these lights, and he's like, what's going on? Big old guy, look at him, my 4-year-old. If this mic was upside down. So anyways, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.